Coming up next, we're back at it again, shining a light on some of the most underrated tracks from female artists ever. It's the latest edition of Female Hidden Gems, but behind these beautiful melodies lie some of the wildest and most twisted stories in rock history. Seriously. Got the story of a soulful singer whose breakout hit became eerily prophetic after she was kidnapped and assaulted and held captive after it was a hit. This tragic incident turned the song on its head, but ultimately became an anthem of empowerment. It's an incredible story. We'll also reveal how one of the biggest girl groups of the 80s recorded their final hit in a studio combat zone. That story involves physical altercations, thrown bottles, substance abuse, and sabotage instruments, all while the song's lyrics literally documented the band's collapse in real time. Plus, the female icon who canceled her wedding night and her honeymoon to record a song where she basically ripped off a fellow legend's new song. She put new lyrics over his music. It became a smash. We'll see what his reaction was on it next. Let's get it going. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Make sure to subscribe below right now to get the latest and greatest. All right, we're about to dig up some hidden gems, female hidden gems, for your playlist. All right, kicking things off at number 7, it's the Go-Gos with Head Over Heels. Do you remember this one from '84? Head over heels, where should I go? All right, so after breaking into the LA scene, well, the new wave scene in '78, and after some early shifts, this band settled into the lineup of lead vocalist Belinda Carlisle, guitarist Jane Wiedlin and Charlotte Caffey, drummer Gina Schock, and of course bassist Kathy Valentine. The all-female Go-Gos released their first album, Beauty and the Beat, in 1981. That of course featured We Got the Beat and Our Lips Are Sealed. Iconic hits that put them on the map. We Got the Beat went to number 2 on the Hot 100 and was featured over the opening credits of Fast Times at Ridgemont High and gave it a boost there. The album itself scored number 1 on the Billboard 200 on its way to going double platinum. Now, their second LP, Vacation, that came out in 1982. Title track went to number 8 on the Hot 100, and the album also reached number 8. From the outside looking in, it seemed like this all-girl band was firing on all cylinders. The Go-Gos gave us these bright, infectious harmony pop songs. They looked like all-American girls, but if you pull back the curtain, the Go-Gos were a hot mess. Drug addiction and alcohol abuse were rampant. Infighting led to meltdowns in the studio and on stage. It wasn't uncommon for these band members to mouth insults at each other while they were performing. And there's even more stories of them sabotaging each other's instruments. So by the time the Go-Gos recorded their third album, 1984's Talk Show, the fivesome was barely hanging on. Tensions continued to grow over royalty disputes. The ladies, they didn't share songwriting credits equally, so writing credits were at a premium. Adding to all the stress, drummer Gina Schock was diagnosed with a congenital heart defect and underwent open heart surgery. Add to that Jane Wiedlin's departure in late 1984, and it had started hitting the fan. So Jane quit shortly after the band finished their primetime tour. The last straw for Jane leaving was a dispute over her song Forget That Day. She'd written the very personal track, and she wanted to be the lead singer on it. You can't blame her. However, the rest of the band shot her down on that. According to Jane, she said, one of them said, "What makes you think you're good enough to sing the song?" Jane also desperately wanted it to be a single, but that never happened. The rest of the band rejected Forget That Day, and they did this in favor of Head Over Heels. Feeling like she was being stifled from there, Jane soon quit the band. Now, according to Belinda Carlisle, she said that was the beginning of the end. That album, we were runner-ragging. Now, believe it or not, Jane later said that Head Over Heels was her favorite Go-Go song. She called it a classic, like a little pop truffle of chocolate that's just completely delicious. Songwriting credit for Head Over Heels, that went to Kathy Valentine and Charlotte Caffey, explaining how the lyrics pretty much summed up what was happening in the band at the time. Valentine would say things like one hand is reaching out and one's just hanging on. Those were really about self-reflection and a dawning awareness that the band in certain areas of our lives were getting kind of out of control. Head Over Heels, that was recorded in what was basically a studio war zone. The Go-Gos were at their breaking point. They flew to England to work with producer Martin Rushton, but they frequently got into physical altercations, into a cat fight, as they would say. In the studio, this happened, and reportedly even threw bottles at each other. But somehow, it all got done, and Head Over Heels was released as the debut single. That went to number 11 in America, and it was their last hit. But it couldn't save the band from themselves. By 1985, the Go-Gos had broken up. All right, coming in at the number 6 position, I'm featuring Debbie Harry and the band Blondie. The song is their comeback hit, Maria. In June of '97, Debbie Harry, Chris Stein, Clem Burke, and Jimmy Destry reformed Blondie after a 15-year hiatus to record new material. It had been the better part of about 2 decades since the band's last hit, Rapture, in '81. And of course, a lot had changed. After being approached to record some new songs to add to a greatest hits collection, Blondie chose instead to put out an album of entirely new material. The result was 1999's No Exit, their 7th studio album. 2 producers from Blondie's past joined the project. Mike Chapman helped them record demos for the album, and the group's first producer, Craig Leone, he put together the final product. However, as Debbie Harry, Chris Stein, Clem Burke, and Jimmy Destry were preparing their big comeback, former members Frank Infante and Nigel Harrison filed a $1 million lawsuit against the band. They alleged that the band's management and the Core Four had conspired to block them from their own legacy. Frank and Nigel argued that because they had written and performed on hits like One Way or Another, they were legally part of the Blondie brand. Now, Chris Stein and the legal team argued that Blondie was not a corporate entity that guaranteed lifetime membership. Rather, they framed the 1982 breakup as the final breakup. The Core Four argued that they were the founders and that Infante and Harrison were hired hands who had been promoted to band members later. So Frank and Nigel's lawyers attempted to get a preliminary injunction to stop the band from using the name Blondie without them. And in a moment of pure rock awkwardness, the judge asked, Chris, Clem, Jimmy, can you guys try to get along for the sake of this tour? But their response was a flat no. The judge ultimately ruled in favor of Harry and Stein, Deborah Harry and Chris Stein, they were Blondie, stating that the court could not compel artistic collaboration. Now, Maria was No Exit's standout track, though. It was written by the band's keyboardist, Jimmy Destry, who said it was about teenage desire. He wrote the song while thinking back on his days in Catholic school, back when he was dreaming about meeting the perfect girl. When recording their 1999 comeback, producer Craig Leone and the band struggled to make Maria sound like Blondie, though. Modern 90s production was making them sound just too polished. So Blondie decided to record the bulk of the No Exit album in Chris Stein's Manhattan basement. And Craig Leone, he intentionally sought out technically obsolete equipment to capture that original Blondie vibe. She moves like she don't care. So No Exit arrived in 1999 and received a warm reception from both the public and the critics. This is after a long time away. The album debuted at number 18 on the top 200 chart and turned in strong sales. It sold over 2 million copies worldwide. And Maria became their first chart topper in 18 years, only not here in the US. In fact, while Maria went top 10 in 15 plus countries, including number 1 in the UK, Spain, Poland, and Greece, it didn't go anywhere near there in the US. Actually, Maria didn't even break into the top 40. That's right, the snarky New York post-punk outfit came in at number 82. However, Maria did fare a lot better on the dance charts. It went to number 3. I got to tell you, this Blondie hidden gem is definitely worth another listen. Go check it out. We'll link to it below. Oh man, coming in at number 5, this is a heart-wrenching story. Incredible song, I've Got Mercy by Duffy. You got me begging you for mercy. Like I said, this one has a tragic and heartbreaking story tied to it. Not only for this artist's career, but even worse for her life. So had things played out differently, you think about it, it's possible we could be talking about Duffy in the same breath as Adele. I mean, she was absolutely phenomenal, an old school soul singer, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's just get into her story. Hailing from Bangor Wells, Aimee with an I and two E's, Duffy, released her first record in 2004, a 3-song EP under the name Aimee Duffy. Now, it reached number 1 on the Welsh charts. And then after moving to North London, Duffy signed a contract with A&M Records in 2007 and released her first single, Rock Fairy. It went to number 45 on the UK charts. The album Rock Fairy, Duffy's first, that dropped on March 3rd, 2008. And this is where she made a name for herself. The LP scored 4 hits in the UK. Stepping Stone went to number 21. Rain on the Parade went to number 15. Warwick Avenue went to number 3. And her biggest single, Mercy, went to number 1.
But I will never be a stepping stone to you. I'm gonna rain on your parade when I get to Warwick Avenue.
Mercy was also an international sensation, peaking at number 1 in no less than 12 countries, and it broke into the top 5 in another 13 more. Although here in the US it stalled at number 27 on the Hot 100, but it did reach number 4 in the adult alternative chart. Mercy was also picked up by shows like Grey's Anatomy and Glee and Sex and the City, the movie, so it was big. Now, Mercy was written as a soulful 60s pastiche about a girl begging a lover to stop playing with her heart. For this one, Duffy teamed up with songwriter Steve Booker, who also produced the track. The two actually met by complete coincidence. Duffy was looking for somewhere to live. She knocked on a door and met the songwriter, and together they cut the track for Rock Fairy. Said Duffy, and I quote, "I'd already written the lyrics to Mercy. It was like this melodic poem in my mind, which I just had to get out, and I knew exactly what I wanted it to sound like." Now, according to Duffy, Mercy's lyrics were about having a feeling towards someone, whether it's a romantic feeling or just some chemistry that you don't want, and you desperately want to be released from that. Now, moving ahead to 2010, Duffy released her second album, Endlessly, which failed to live up to the success of its predecessor. And then in 2011, Duffy announced she was taking time off from music and retreated from the limelight. For the better part of a decade, Duffy vanished from the public eye. However, in 2020, the singer posted a message on Instagram explaining her absence. She said, "Many of you wonder what happened to me. Where did I disappear to and why? A journalist contacted me, and he found a way to reach me, and I told him everything this past summer." Duffy then related a harrowing tale, widely believed to have taken place in 2010 or 2011. I guess on her birthday, Duffy was drugged at a restaurant, and she was kidnapped. She was held captive and assaulted. Said the singer, "I was drugged and traveled to a foreign country. I can't remember getting on the plane, and I came around in the back of a traveling vehicle." Duffy was taken to a hotel room where she was attacked. Duffy said that she escaped by fleeing, but she didn't go into particulars. On her Instagram post, she assured everyone that she's okay and safe now, but recovery had taken a long time, which of course you could understand. For a decade, there was no sunshine in her life, but by this point, she was ready to tell her story. And it's so horrible. My heart truly goes out to her. Such a talented and beautiful individual. Because of what happened, her song Mercy took on a chilling new meaning. Now, fans have pointed out to the lyrics, "You got me begging you for mercy, why won't you release me?" as eerily prophetic.
Why won't you release me? I said.
Duffy would say for years she couldn't sing her hits because she felt like she was living the lyrics in a way she never intended. However, more recently, her relationship with the songs seemed to be undergoing a profound change. While Mercy was once a sonic prison, Duffy is reclaiming the song on her own terms. Duffy made her first visual public appearance in over a decade in March 2025. This was to promote a remix of Mercy by the group Emotion. The song itself, many see it now as a symbol of empowerment and coming out of darkness into the light. Incredible story of perseverance there. So at number 4, I've got a phenomenal duet by Hope Sandoval of Mazzy Star. And also Jim Reed from the Jesus and Mary chain, Sometimes Always. You got to hear this song. So the Jesus and Mary chain is built around the feuding Scottish brothers, Jim and William Reed, who've been the band's only consistent members since its formation back in 1983. To date, they've had something like 20 members come in and out of the band's revolving door, and they've released 8 studio albums. I love Jesus and Mary Chain. I love the song Head On. One of my favorites. Now, in the 90s, they strung together 6 top 25 hits in the U.S. on the alternative charts. They're bigger in Britain, where they tallied 11 top 40 hits. The song Sometimes Always comes from JAMC's 5th studio album, Stoned and Dethroned, that was released on August 23rd, 1994. The record was kind of a departure for the band, featuring a mostly acoustic, folk, and country influence mix of songs, which was different than their sound before.
Don't make me do that, please.
Meanwhile, Hope Sandoval was coming off her second Mazzy Star album, So That Tonight I Might See, the classic. Mazzy Star, which also featured David Roback, is best known for their dark and dreamy indie hit Fade Into You, which we've covered before. That one reached number 3 on the U.S. alternative rock chart. On Sometimes Always, though, the Reed brothers would converge with Hope. Speaking on the collaboration, William would comment, "We'd always liked Hope's voice. We asked her years ago to be on one of our records, but there was never a song that suited. Then this one came along and it felt right." So I guess initially the band worried that Sometimes Always was a bit too cute, too light of a story. But according to William, when they recorded it, Hope and Jim transcended it. Sometimes Always was released on Stoned and Dethroned. It was their first single on July 18th, 1994. It reached number 4 here on the alternative charts and number 22 in the UK. But here's where things get a little twisted. While lead singer Jim Reed sang the duet with Hope, the song was actually a product of a volatile secret relationship between Hope and his brother William that was going on behind the scenes. The couple's relationship was so insular and private that even close associates of the band didn't know the full extent of their bond until many years later. At the time of the recording of Sometimes Always, Hope and William were on again, off again lovers. And the song, which is actually a conversation about an ex-couple deciding whether to reunite, that was a real-life mirror of their personal drama. And it kind of says something about the weirdness of the Reed brothers that Sandoval sang a lover's duet with Jim, while at the same time she was having a secret relationship, a secret affair with William. Added to the drama for sure. Jim Reed later revealed that William was actually still dating his long-term girlfriend named Rona, and when he first got involved with Hope, so it was an affair. So Hope was a continually divisive, if not chaotic force between the brothers, who already had a volatile dynamic. Complicating things further, an American tour was booked to support Stoned and Dethroned with Mazzy Star on the bill with them. This didn't sit well with Jim, as he viewed Hope as a massive distraction. For example, on November 27th, 1994, the Jesus and Mary Chain and Mazzy Star were booked to play the Roxy in L.A. Huge venue there. Not huge in terms of a lot of people, but just a big venue. Jim recalled, "I remember in L.A. after the sound check, William was going back to Hope's, and I said, 'You're not going to have time to go back and come back for the gig.' He rolled up about 5 minutes after showtime, and I was so pissed off, I screamed at him." The relationship between William and Hope is believed to have ended in late 94, as I understand. William later explained that while he had fallen in love with Hope, it was the unhappiest time in his life. He said it was horrible, horrible, horrible. But you know what? Sometimes Always, it's anything but. And while this song officially belongs to the Jesus and Mary Chain, I would argue that it's Hope that really makes this track shine. Now, Hope, for her part, actually returned to sing on JAMC's final 90s album, Monkey, that came out in 98, on the track Perfume. It was a cold final collaboration between two people who'd once been indie rock's most secretive power couple.
I always knew you'd take me back.
All right, coming in at number 3 on the countdown, I've got Mono with Life in Mono. Check this out. This short-lived act was a London trip-hop duo who brought wildly different influences to the table. If you haven't heard them, you got to check them out. Singer Siobhan Damare came from a soul and R&B background, while programmer Martin Virgo was obsessed with 1960s pop music. They were essentially strangers when they started making music together, going all in before really understanding each other's personalities or each other's creative visions. And that was a big mistake, because there's a cool story here. In 96, they released their debut single, Life in Mono, on their first EP, actually. The track is haunting and is very cinematic, blending moody trip-hop rhythms with atmospheric electronica. They sampled John Barry's theme from the Ipcris File, also Burt Bacharach's Walk On By, creating a retro spy film vibe that feels nostalgic and suspenseful. Siobhan's breathy, whispering vocals floated over minimalist production featuring sampled harpsichord riffs, subtle strings, light drum and bass beats, and clattering backbeats. It's a really cool song. Now, lyrically, the song's narrative reflects on a dreamlike past encounter triggered by a stranger singing someone else's theme. The repeated refrain, ingenue, I just don't know what to do, that captures innocent vulnerability in the face of fading memories and unresolved regrets. An ingenue in literature and film, is typically a young, naive woman vulnerable to manipulation or danger. The lyrics use the concept of mono as a metaphor for a singular, lonely existence where the narrator feels like a character trapped in a black and white film. And you can definitely get that feeling from this song. Now, Life in Mono was released in '97 on the band's only album, Formica Blues, and it was actually handpicked, reportedly, by Robert De Niro as the theme for the 1998 modern adaptation of Great Expectations, which of course starred Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow as well. For you, anything!
I do love the way you dance.
Suddenly, this obscure UK duo was thrust into the spotlight. The soundtrack placement prompted another single re-release and generated a fair amount of buzz. Though Life in Mono stalled at number 70 on the Hot 100, it did climb to number 20 on the U.S. Alternative Airplay chart, so there's that. Mono would also perform on Late Night with Conan O'Brien and score some commercial placements as well. Said Siobhan, it was an extraordinary situation being so intensely creative with a stranger, and then suddenly being on tour and on television in America, and then this big film score. It just seemed to come out of nowhere. But Mono's sudden momentum didn't last long, and soon cracks began to show. Siobhan admitted that she and Martin really didn't know each other that well, and their inherent creative differences became a wedge between them. When it came time for a second album to follow it up, things fell apart completely. Martin told Siobhan that he didn't want any vocals on the album, and then he locked himself in this little studio, it was actually their studio, refusing to come out. As Siobhan recalled, I used to turn up and leave coffee on the doorstep and the odd croissant. He rarely opened the doors, so it just ended there. After the breakup, Siobhan joined former Cocteau Twins guitarist Robin Guthrie in the band Violet, Indiana. They released 3 albums between 2000 and 2004. But Life in Mono remains Siobhan's most memorable song, a perfect moment frozen in time. All right, today at our runner-up spot, at our number 2 spot, we got a true indie artist, one of my favorites. You Can Make a Killing by the second Aimee, spelled A-I-M-E-E on the countdown, Aimee Mann.
So you can make a killing.
Aimee Mann, of course, was the lead vocalist of Till Tuesday in the 80s. She started the band back in '82 and signed with Epic Records the next year. In 1985, Till Tuesday released their debut album, Voices Carry, featuring the number 8 breakout single of the same name. Incredible song, actually one of my favorites from the 80s. But by 1988, Till Tuesday had effectively broken up. For the next 3 years, Aimee Mann fought with Epic to release her from her contract. The label finally relented and dropped her in 1992, but it was a battle. Aimee Mann's manager helped finance her solo debut, Whatever, produced by then-boyfriend John Bryan and released in 1993 on I'ma Go Records. Whatever drew rave reviews, great album, but disaster struck when I'ma Go filed for bankruptcy. I'ma Go's president, who owned Mann's contract, pitched Mann's completed second album, I Was Stupid, to some other labels, major labels. As a personal favor to the president of I'ma Go, Warner offered to release it. But Aimee Mann didn't want anything to do with Warner. She eventually signed with Geffen Records and released I Was Stupid in early 1996, another great album. Also in the mix was visionary filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson, who helped rescue Aimee's career. Anderson is known for directing films like Boogie Nights and Punch Drunk Love and Magnolia. And of course, There Will Be Blood, amongst so many other classics. I love Paul Thomas Anderson.
I drink your milkshake.
He also did music videos for Radiohead and Fiona Apple and Aimee Mann. Paul was a friend of Aimee's and he was obsessed with her music. In fact, while editing his '97 breakout film Boogie Nights, he kept her CD I Was Stupid playing on for months on repeat.
Boogie Nights.
And for Magnolia in 1999, Paul had to record music for the bulk of the soundtrack. He had 9 songs there, including Save Me and a cover of Harry Nilsson's One. She was nominated for an Oscar, and everybody in the cast sang Wise Up.
Going to stop.
Anderson would say that Simon & Garfunkel is to The Graduate as Aimee Mann is to Magnolia. High praise for sure. Ultimately, Amy's collaboration with Paul gave her career a much-needed boost at the time.
Of the tourniquet.
So you might be thinking, what was it about I'm With Stupid, the album, that captivated Paul Thomas Anderson, right? Well, the whole album is fantastic. From the opening shots of Long Shot to staple tracks like Amateur and That's Just What You Are, I'm With Stupid feels like a barbed wire kiss in the best possible way.
I don't think so. You're an amateur. Changing cause, that's just what you are.
But I gotta give some love to You Could Make a Killing. It was written in 1994 during a period that Aimee Mann has described as a pathetic but romanticized low point in her personal life. Actually, Aimee Mann had a major crush on Oasis's Noel Gallagher just before he became a global superstar. Aimee even admitted to getting on a plane and flying to one of Oasis's shows just to try and hang out, even though she had no way of getting in touch with him. So yes, the song was actually written about Noel Gallagher and his rise to fame, actually. The song's hollowed-out acoustic vibe was a deliberate choice to match the song's themes of emotional desperation, and you can definitely feel it in the song.
So you can make a killing.
Although You Can Make a Killing was recorded by early 1995, it was held hostage by Amy's bankrupt label, Go Records. So due to the legal battle, the song wasn't officially available in the US until January of 96 through Geffen. It was released as a single the same year, but failed to chart. Crazy.
You could make a killing.
3 years later in 1999, it was featured in a pivotal scene in the Reese Witherspoon Sarah Michelle Gellar flick Cruel Intentions. Of course, a melodramatic movie about wealthy teenagers killing each other's reputations, literally. So at least it got some exposure there.
Quite the predicament you're in.
Cruel Intentions.
If there ever was a female hidden gem worth shining some light on, Aimee Mann's You Could Make a Killing gets high praise. Incredible song. All right, we're here. The number 1 pick for this edition of Female Hidden Gems, The Heavenly Seven. It's a top 10 hit by Stevie Nicks that I just never hear on the radio anymore. I've got Stand Back. I mean, seriously, I never hear this song on the radio, and it's an incredible song, and it's got a really crazy story. So in 1983, Stevie secretly married Kim Anderson. He's the widower of her best friend, Robin Snyder. So Robin had recently passed away from leukemia after giving birth to her and Kim's son. It was a bizarre situation for sure. Stevie and Kim were on their way to their honeymoon, driving down Ventura Highway, actually on the way to their wedding night. But all of a sudden, inspiration struck. Prince's new song, Little Red Corvette, came on the radio just then. And out of nowhere, Stevie started singing along, only with her own lyrics. She was throwing in the phrase, stand back. Said Nicks, I'm like, Kim, pull over. We need to buy a tape recorder because I got to record this. So they did. The two pulled off the freeway. They found a record shop and Stevie bought a tape recorder and also the cassette single of Little Red Corvette. And then, instead of celebrating their wedding night and their honeymoon, the couple stayed up until morning writing the song Stand Back. They basically lifted Little Red Corvette's melody in the process of doing this, although lyrically the songs sound nothing alike. But Stevie felt like she had used enough of Prince's song that she needed his blessing to be able to finish it. So she put her honeymoon on the back burner, the wedding night, so that she could record it immediately. When Stevie arrived at the studio, she called Prince. She was really excited, but also kind of freaked out to talk to him. She said, I know 50% of this song is yours, and we're at Sunset Sound right now. Would you maybe like to come down and hear it? Now, Stevie didn't think for a second that Prince would ever come. As it turns out, though, Prince was actually in Los Angeles at that moment. He was only 20 minutes away. He said, "I'll be right down." So about 20 minutes later, he showed up. Prince listened to the track and he went straight to a keyboard that was there and he played new parts for the song. And Stevie was blown away. It was the coolest thing she'd ever heard. When he was finished, Prince dismissed any talk of songwriting credit. He didn't care. He gave Stevie an awkward hug. He thought it was a great song, and then he just vanished into the night. Stevie basically took Prince's song, she put her lyrics over it, and he loved it. I love Prince. Love Prince stories. Stand Back was released as the lead single from Stevie's second solo album, The Wild Heart. Went to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of '83. And it marked the beginning of a kindred musical relationship between Stevie Nicks and Prince. Actually, Prince later reached out to Nicks to return the favor. The Purple One asked her to write the lyrics for Purple Rain. However, after listening to the epic 10-minute music track, that's how much it was then, she was completely overwhelmed. She was stupefied. She had to turn him down. But I think we can say that that worked out for the best. By declining Prince's invitation, Stevie allowed him to create his definitive masterpiece his way. Years later, Prince also revealed that Stevie's Edge of 17 helped inspire When Doves Cry, proving that the inspiration flowed both ways. And to this day, whenever Stevie performs Stand Back, she actually credits Prince. Pretty crazy. She ripped off Prince for Little Red Corvette. She ripped off Little Red Corvette for Stand Back. And then Prince sent her Purple Rain. And Prince actually had to do the same thing, Stevie calling him. Prince called Journey to say, "I think I might have ripped off Faithfully a little bit in the guitar solo." And they did the same thing that Prince did with Stevie Nicks. They said, "No, I think you're good." I love these stories. Prince, Journey, Stevie Nicks, a through line. Gosh, I miss the 70s and the 80s and the 60s and all that great fresh music that was being made back then. All right, there you have it. Those are the hidden gems from all these incredible female artists. What are your memories? What do you think we should cover? What other obscure songs that should have been hits or were hits and have been forgotten should we cover? It's kind of what this channel is all about, right? Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community to keep this music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.